Have you ever heard of a love so powerful it could bring an entire empire to its knees? A king who would willingly give up his crown, his title, and his country for the woman he loved. This isn't a fairy tale, but the real-life story of Prince Edward and Wallis Simpson, a romance that shook the British monarchy to its very core. Let's turn back the clock to the 1930s. Prince Edward, the Prince of Wales, was the world's most eligible bachelor. He was handsome, charismatic, and the heir to the most powerful throne on earth. Everyone expected him to marry a suitable, aristocratic young woman and secure the future of the Windsor dynasty. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. In 1931, at a weekend house party, Edward met Wallis Simpson. She wasn't what anyone expected. She was an American, for starters. And not just any American, but a commoner who was already on her second marriage. Wallis was witty, intelligent, and possessed a confidence that captivated the prince. She wasn't intimidated by his royal status. She treated him like a man, not a future king, and for Edward, this was intoxicating. Their connection was immediate and intense. Edward became utterly infatuated. He showered Wallis with lavish gifts, jewels, money, trips abroad. He was completely devoted to her. To his friends and family, this was more than just a passing affair. It was an obsession. The royal family, led by King George VIII and Queen Mary, was horrified. They saw Wallis as a socially ambitious, unsuitable woman who was leading their son astray. The British press, at the time, had a gentleman's agreement with the government and the palace to keep the affair out of the papers. So while the rest of the world, especially America, was reading scandalous headlines about the prince and his married American mistress, the British public remained largely in the dark. They still saw Edward as their charming, beloved people's prince. But everything changed in January 1936. King George VIII died, and Prince Edward ascended the throne as King Edward VIII. The affair could no longer be a private matter. He was now the head of the Church of England, which strictly forbade the remarriage of divorced people if their former spouse was still alive. And Wallis was not only divorced once, but she was in the process of divorcing her second husband, Ernest Simpson. Edward was faced with an impossible choice. He was determined to marry Wallis, but as king, this was constitutionally and religiously unacceptable. The government, led by Prime Minister Stanley Baldwin, made it crystal clear the public would never accept Queen Wallis. They presented him with three options: give up Wallis, marry her against the government's wishes and cause a constitutional crisis that could dissolve the government, or abdicate. The king tried to find a compromise. He proposed a morganatic marriage, where Wallis would be his wife but not his queen, and any children they had would not be in the line of succession. But this was also rejected. The establishment was unmovable. For them, it was the crown or the woman. There was no middle ground. Edward felt trapped. He loved Wallis more than he loved the crown. He believed he couldn't carry the heavy burden of being king without her by his side. So, on December 10, 1936, after just 326 days on the throne, one of the shortest reigns in British history, he made his decision. The following evening, he addressed the nation and the world in a now famous radio broadcast. In a voice filled with emotion, he said, "I have found it impossible to carry the heavy burden of responsibility and to discharge my duties as king as I would wish to do without the help and support of the woman I love." With those words, he gave up everything. The crown passed to his younger brother, Albert, who became King George VI, the father of the future Queen Elizabeth II. Edward was given the new title of Duke of Windsor, and he and Wallis were essentially exiled from Britain. They married in France in 1937, but the royal family's disapproval continued. Wallis was denied the title Her Royal Highness, a slight that deeply wounded Edward for the rest of his life. They lived a glamorous, globe-trotting life as international celebrities, but it was a life lived in the shadow of what they had lost. They were often seen at parties and social events, always impeccably dressed. But many historians believe there was a lingering sadness and a sense of purposelessness about their existence. They were never truly welcomed back into the royal fold. The story of Edward and Wallis is complex. Was it the greatest love story of the 20th century? Or was it a story of a man shirking his duty for an infatuation? Some see it as the ultimate romantic gesture, a testament to the power of love over duty and tradition. Others view it as a selfish act that plunged the monarchy into crisis and placed an unprepared brother onto the throne on the brink of World War II. What's undeniable is the impact of their choice. It forever changed the course of the British monarchy, leading directly to the reign of Queen Elizabeth II. It remains a powerful and controversial chapter in royal history, a story of forbidden love that cost a king his throne. What do you think? Was he a romantic hero or a man who abandoned his duty? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into history's most compelling stories. See you in the next video.